I am your host, Brittany Cleveland, and I serve as the Senior Manager of Partner Engagement here at collegegreenlight.com, where we support the needs of over 16,000 college access counselors and 200 leading colleges across the country, providing free online college admissions and scholarship resources for first-generation and underrepresented college-bound students. And if you are new to collegegreenlight.com, well, welcome. Hello. Thank you so much for joining the Green Team today. And we love to have you join our great team of access counselors kicking butt and tackling challenges of undermatching affordability one student at a time. To maximize today's presentation, let me just kind of redirect your attention to our PowerPoint and give you a couple of housekeeping tips. You all can use the chat features to your right of the or the bottom of the screen to add comments or ask questions. We encourage you all to ask as many questions as you like. We are going to reserve about 15 minutes to take Q&A. And if we do not get to your questions, we will definitely send over those questions to the Soka team to get their responses. In addition to that, you all, if you need to jump out of today's webinar and leave early, you all will receive a recording and the slides of today's presentation within the next 24 hours. And then also, please, we encourage you all to share the recording and slides with students and colleagues. It takes a village, so please spread the word. And before you leave, please complete our survey and tell us how we're doing. That survey is really essential to the way that we identify new ideas and topics for upcoming webinars, and to improve them and make sure that they are insightful and can be used throughout your advising efforts with your students and your team. And today I am really excited to have with us Chelsea Duggar and Astrid Durantes. This dynamic duo of the Soka team will discuss counselor best practices today with us to help support low-income first-generation students as they make the physical transition from home to a residential college experience. But before we dive in, I wanted to give you all just a little bit of context. So essentially, with our webinars, we plan our webinars months in advance, and we came up with the idea of let's having a conversation around first-gen low-income student best practices of traveling from home to college. And due to the onset of coronavirus, we know our country is facing very trying and kind of scary times, right? And on behalf of the College Greenlight team and the Soka team, we really wanted to give you all an update on the state of college admissions and enrollment as it relates to coronavirus, and provide you all with some updates, available resources that can help you best assist and inform your students through the challenging a state of admissions and enrollment. So with that being said, let me direct your attention to our slides here. So team, we wanted to just give you all just a little bit of a landscape of where we are in admissions. NACAC, the National Association for College Admissions, recently published a coronavirus impact dashboard earlier this week, where they have identified resources and compiled aggregated data to give an update on different visits and the condition of admissions, programming on the campus. So they were able to collect information for 494 colleges and universities across the country. And I wanted just to kind of give you all some high-level information. So of the 494 colleges and universities, 95 reported to have kind of open opportunities to admission visitors. 43 are currently hosting admissions events, all of which have reported to move their physical events and in-person events online and virtual. And so these hosted admissions events include our open nights or open days or visit programs, as well as admitted student programming. So those students who have been accepted, they will be moving a lot of their programming online for updates. 125 colleges and universities have changed their the decision reply deadline from May 1st to June 1st. 150 of those colleges and universities have changed their deposit deadline, in which they moved from May 1st to June 1st. I provided a link that you all can use to redirect to the coronavirus impact dashboard. You all can receive that link in the PowerPoint presentation that I will upload for you all to walk along, and I'll make sure that included in the chat box there. A couple additional resources that has been very helpful for us is the Accept group, which they've updated a list of new deposit deadlines, and you all can please follow them on Twitter at Accept Group. And they've also put together a really helpful resources. There's this list of colleges who have updated their deposits, and they update that consistently. Additionally, a couple other additional updates and resources. So for our current college students, we know we had a couple of questions that you all have asked us. Due to financial implications, what we've learned from our college partners is most campus residence halls will remain open for students who must remain on campus. Students will be provided a petition effort to make sure that they are able to take advantage of the resources on campus in the case that they cannot at home. But any student who can move home to a different location, they are strongly encouraging that. So definitely follow up with your students and make sure that they are aware of the resources that are available on their campus. And as an advocate, we encourage you all to also follow up with student affairs or your admissions representatives to get you in the right direction. Also, SAT canceled their testing through May. Students should consider test optional colleges at this time. And we advise and encourage you guys to visit a comprehensive list of test optional colleges at fairtest.org. Additionally, all spring travel for college admissions representatives have been suspended through May. Basically, what that means is for outreach and any spring visits and or high school visits, college fairs has been canceled or postponed. For NACAC college fairs, most of them have been canceled. Additionally, our college and student fly-in programs, what we have heard from majority of our colleges is that many of the admitted student programs have been moved online. For any programs that are after May, so starting in June and July, they're still figuring out the status. So those have not been officially canceled at the moment. And then summer bus tours, many of you all are organizing your campus bus tours across the country. What we have heard is, again, similar to the fly-in program status, because that happens around June and July, that is still, they're still trying to figure out the next steps. And we advise you all to follow up with your admissions representatives to get an update on where they stand. But what does this mean for our counselors, and how can College Greenlight help? So we really do honor the work that you guys are doing on the ground. And so we put together some really great resources as our commitment to help inform our village and inform our counselors, students, and families. So we're going to be following up with you all and putting some programming and some resources in place. Currently, our parent company, CapEx, has established a COVID-19 Student Resource Center. This is a student and parent-facing dashboard that identifies 424 colleges and universities that have links to virtual tours, as well as links to COVID-19 related web pages. And so you all can use that bit.ly and share that with your community. We will be surveying our college partners about fly-in programs and updates, as well as we will be promoting college virtual outreach mass events via our counselor newsletters. So if you all are not receiving our counselor newsletters, we advise you to please send over an email over to us at info@collegegreenlight.com, and we will make sure that you're on that mailing list. We will be hosting an upcoming webinar with admissions leaders for a general FAQ regarding COVID-19 next week. Please stay tuned for more information. We'll be following up with an email soon. Additionally, this is a lot of information, right? And we are receiving resources from left to right every day. We are working on a working document that lists a handful of helpful resources, including free flights, Wi-Fi, hotspots, fly-in deposit updates related to coronavirus. And so we will be sharing that information with you all. And again, we encourage you all, that resource kit is a way for us to inform our village. So if you all come across any helpful resources that you find crucial, please feel free to upload and input more of those details and that resource kit so that we can get the word out. All right, team. So that was a lot. If you all have any questions, or if you all need help with creating student accounts, or you just need a refresher on Greenlight tools, please email us at info@collegegreenlight.com. And I've done a lot of talking. So let me go ahead and transition over to our guest speakers. I'm going to unmute. Hello, Astrid. Hello, Chelsea. Welcome. Welcome. And I'll have you guys go ahead and take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're excited. I'm going to start our screen share. And Astrid will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Astrid Dorantes, and I am currently the Assistant Director for International Student Services here at Soka University, but I was a veteran of 5 years working on the domestic side for recruitment as well. And myself too, being a first generation student, love sharing information that will just help our community. And just wanted to thank everybody before I pass it on to Chelsea for just being present, whether you're working from home or still in your office. Thank you, hang in there, we're with you. I'm here in the office too. But also just wanted to say, bear with us a little bit. We had to modify it amidst the chaos of the development of COVID-19. Actually, this webinar, we really wanted to run it with our student ambassadors, but unfortunately, they've been encouraged to go home. So Chelsea and I will be leading this today for you, and we're going to try to keep it a little bit more casual, less formal, to have a conversation with y'all about this experience. All right?
Yes, and hello everyone, I'm Chelsea Duggar. I am on the domestic side at Soka, one of the assistant directors of admission. So I'm very excited to be here today. We'll start with our presentation. So the goal is to talk about how to help first generation students transition into campus communities. To start off with, we will work on introducing you to Soka, because it is the foundation from which both of us are coming from. Astrid and I both worked at Soka for the last 5+ years. So to start us off, general overview of our campus. We have a very small intentional community of about 450 students with planned growth coming for fall 2020. Perfect timing, right? As everything's happening. But interesting dynamic of our campus is that 40% of students are international, coming from about 30 different countries and a steady mix of 20+ states in 20+ counties in California. So our students are truly coming from everywhere. The international side is very important for us in terms of our mission and our value system, but it's also important in understanding that most of our students are traveling away from home, substantially, thousands of miles away from home. Our mission is to foster a steady stream of global citizens committed to living a contributive life, and we are founded on the values of peace, human rights, and the sanctity of life. We offer a Bachelor of Arts and Liberal Arts degree with 5 concentrations in life sciences, international studies, environmental studies, humanities, and social behavioral sciences. Some interesting part of our curriculum: we are non-sectarian, and we use interdisciplinary dialogue-based learning. Our average class size is 12 students, and we have an 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio. So we're very high-touch university in terms of supporting our students. We also have a very interesting component that all of our students must take a non-native language of either Mandarin, Chinese, Spanish, Japanese, or French. They'll study that for their first 2 years at Soka and then spend a mandatory semester abroad as part of their 3rd year, being enrolled as international students in a partner university. We work with different program providers for our students to be able to do that, and it's built into our tuition, so there's no additional cost for any student. So it's a way for us to support all students to have that opportunity, regardless of their income level, regardless of anything outside barriers. We have a capstone thesis, as well as learning cluster seminars, which also sometimes on occasion incorporate travel and grants. And so it is another time when our students might be leaving campus. So we're pretty familiar with the concept of having people come and go from far, far places into our living community. The other signature part is that we're 100% residential for all 4 years with a very extensive living learning community. Okay, thank you. Next. This one, in terms of our commitment to supporting students, based on our institutional data, 21% of our students are Pell eligible, and we don't measure the same, dynamic for our international students, but majority of our students are coming from, low, middle economic levels. We are also figuring out as an institution how to properly document our first generation students, let alone how to define that. And Astrid will talk a little bit more about how the definition changes for each institution. We're very, very proud. 92% of our students who began in fall 2017 returned in 2018. And just in terms of understanding that percentage and the numbers, we had 107 students start in 2017 and only 12 have discontinued. So for us, like a couple students is a percentage point, as opposed to some other institutions that have a lot more in that. Our overall graduation rate is 92% have graduated within 4 years. Our most recent cohort had 88% graduate, and 4 students are continuing after their 4 years. So the majority of our students are graduating within that 4-year time frame. Among our NCES data, 90% of students received a BA within 8 years, and 94% were Pell eligible, and 89% were not Pell eligible. So we're actually doing extremely well, specifically with our Pell eligible population, which we're very proud of. two reasons that we think that is so strong is because we have good institutional funding. Our financial aid packages last year, 98% of our students received grants and scholarships, totaling nearly 14.1 million. And again, we have about 450 students, and 13.9 of that came from institutional money. So the majority of our students is coming from Soka's endowment. We primarily give that out through our Soka Opportunity Grant, which states that any families who earn under $60,000 US will receive up to the full cost of tuition in a grant. We have Soka supplementary grants for people who are at different income levels, and so they might get a partial opportunity grant plus a supplemental grant to help meet the costs. Global Merit Scholarship is our full ride to our top academic students. 100% of our students received Soka Merit Scholarships last year. And we have a specific scholarship for a student called the Makaguchi, which is coming from a high school in the African continent. We also are part of the NAIA, and so we offer athletic scholarships as part of our institutional commitment to students without having to pay it back. Interestingly, also Soka does offer a Soka student loan to families who meet eligibility. Primarily our international students, our dreamers, or families who cannot qualify for federal loans. You can answer any questions you have later. And then just to give a quick outline of our recruitment strategy, at Soka we have an early action time period and a regular decision. Year round, we do campus tours, individual tours, and fall we traditionally host 2 preview days, which we do invite. Majority of them are just going to be families coming to visit with us, but as well we've had certain CBOs come and bring maybe 20, 30 students with them to that program. In the spring, we traditionally, this year we've had to cancel, host an overnight weekend. We call it Experience Soka, that has an income fly-in based program. So we can bring students from around the country, as well as any international students who are living in the US for that, or a day visit program if students can't fall within that certain weekend. And starting last year, we were so proud to be part of one of the bus tours that they brought a group of CBO students, and we contributed a mock admissions committee session where we had our students actually look at what, they had to make the decisions of who to admit, understanding kind of the complexity of what we do every single day. We're really hoping to expand those opportunities virtually, physically. We'll see how it all goes. In the fall, we do domestic counselors, do college fairs, high school visits, CBO presentations, and coffee talks. And, just as always, remind students the way that they get invited to those, because some of them are invite only, is through oftentimes email based off of the interest cards. So we always encourage them to show interest. That way they can be notified of smaller gatherings. With that, that's all I have. Thank you so much for bearing with me. And now I'm going to turn it over to Astrid, who will start talking about how we support our students so that we can get them to our campus. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks so much, Chelsea. So so these are going to be our 4 highlights of today. Just the general overview. We're going to talk about alleviating parent and guardian fears. What are those fears or concerns looking like when their child is going to be traveling away from home? As well as reviewing the logistical and financial stressors that a student may need to be aware of before preparing to travel and that transition to college. We also will talk about the strategies that students can use once they reach our campuses to create a sense of belonging, as well as a network of support in the new environment, and of course the common stresses that they're going to face in the initial move in the adjustment period, including some of the questions that we received earlier. What is the transition back after their first year? So I want to start just really quickly through the College Board's definition of just what first generation is. I'm sure you all know, you all support this wonderful population, and like Brittany mentioned, you all are amazing warriors that we're just so thankful to have as well on the ground when we are on the road. But so the first generation comes either from low income or middle income, some also higher income families, and it's families without the college ongoing tradition, right? And so some parents here will support the student to continue on to higher education, but some families might want their child to skip that and go directly into the workforce to help support. We're also looking at families that have a lot of misconceptions about going to college, as well as those students that may come from families that speak different languages other than English in their home. So there's not a perfect or a ideal definition for the first generation students. They come different packages, basically. So if we can go to the next slide of alleviating student and parent guardian appeal. So I just want to share a little bit of just my experience in terms of, it was a while back, I will say, but just sharing about what I wish I knew at that time. And I did feel like I went to a college prep school, so I knew that I was going to go 4-year school right away, but I didn't know what that was going to look like. I actually wasn't aware or often encouraged to go visit campuses. It was always virtual. So again, that list making for families or for students, what does that look like? And it's important to also note that within that first generation population, we do have international students traveling for the first time. We have undocumented students or students that come from mixed status homes. What that means is their parents might be undocumented, but they might be citizens. And so what does that look like for a parent when their child says they want to go across the country, and that fear of not being able to get to them in case of an emergency? So those stressors are real and part of the parent experience too, as well as the child experience. Those feelings of leaving the home for the first time and what that guilt looks like. I know I remember I was going to be the first one to leave my home, and I knew that I had to choose between either a state school or a private school. And Soka is my alma mater, but that was a big concern for my family. I remember my brother saying, "Are you sure you want to go to this private school? You know, mom is going to have to pay way more out of pocket. Private schools are way more expensive than if you were to have gone, or if you to have go to a state school." And I said, you know, I really, really want to go to the school. I heard that in the school I can change the world, and I want to be a part of it. I don't care what it takes. And so that process, that first year, Soka actually didn't offer the Soka Opportunity Grant that we have of under $60,000. So I knew that I had to borrow money, but I didn't know what that meant. Like, I did not know what that navigation process was going to look like. So I already carried a lot of guilt of going home and knowing that I was going to be a financial burden to my family, but also the opportunity that maybe my older siblings didn't have the opportunity to go to college, right? And so being able to affirm your student as a counselor is going to be one of the processes that will really help the student understand that it's okay. You know, you're changing generational wealth and education within their families too. I also want to talk about affirming the parents' concerns, because these are real too. Giving themselves time to figure it out, the process, including them in workshops early on. I know here in a local community, there have different organizations that help parents and help the parent be able to be more involved, at least one workshop or 2 workshops. If you're able to invite them for pizza, invite them for a little cafecito, or you know, whatever it is in the community that you're working, just to engage them and have that conversation of what that transition looks like, what to expect, and what to prepare in this process too, and to just affirm once again that their emotions are real and that it's okay, and it's going to be getting used to a new family dynamic. And so we can go one more slide over. We're gonna, sorry. Here are a few resources that we're going to give you to read as well. But again, just in that process of affirming the families, just reassuring them that it's going to be a new dynamic, but things that they can do is continue to call and tell your student, call your parent, let them know you're okay. And slowly, it doesn't have to be every day. You know, I remember calling my mom almost every day at the beginning, and then slowly saying, hey, I'm busy, I have to work. And just letting them know, you know, this is going to happen. That communication has to be a little constant, but also being able to set those boundaries to focus on work. So that's on my side right now.
Yes, thank you, Astrid. The next I'll speak to is kind of the logistical and financial considerations that we found have been helpful to have a plan. Even if it's not a perfect answer, it's helpful to understand this is something that we're going to have to be ready for. And the logistics side, the first is, of course, the travel discussions. As we mentioned with mixed status families, it's always important to take into full consideration the weight of traveling across state lines, let alone borders, in order to go to college, and deciding, if you are in-state, local, how are you going to pack? How are you going to get there? Is it reasonable to fly? Are you going to drive? That is an important thing to do. The packing list itself, the next slide will show you, has a bunch of great resources. There's some blogs out there that past first-gen students have written about what to bring, how to pack your things. One we always try to emphasize to families is to have a plan, not just for getting your stuff there, but what you're going to do once you have to come home in the summer, because majority of students don't stay year-round on the campus. And so they're either going to have to budget to have storage space. Maybe some universities are able to provide that, but then where the student going to store, physically things, you can't just throw a bunch of clothes in a pile. Or if you're going to bring it, back and forth, how are you going to do that? Talking to the family about what happens to, if I have my own room, is it going to be gone? Is it going to be there when I get back? What about the end of their 4 years? And this is especially right now present on a lot of people's minds, because a lot of students are returning home unexpectedly because of everything that's going on. So it's just a good reminder that when you have a plan, it can help even if you didn't expect it to in that moment. We also have important documents and forms. So one of the things that is going to become much more present in our lives is that most of our domestic students are going to need government ID that's in compliance with real ID. And that process, just in case any of you haven't done it yet, can take quite a while to gather all the documents together, make the appointment with the DMV in order to get everything turned in. And so for a lot of our students, we don't want them rushing to do that, during that first semester of college, when they're already handling so much stress. It might be helpful to have those steps in place so that, their appointment is there, or that even if possible to do it the summer before. As far as we know right now, Real ID laws will go into effect on October 1st of 2020. And the Real ID is especially important if any student is intending to travel by airplane within the United States with commercial flights, because they will have to have that. It also complicates for students who can't, because of legal reasons, have a Real ID, or who are going to be using a passport. That process to renew or get a passport also is not overnight, and it's already kind of expensive. And so we're always trying to reduce the number of fees that students have to pay to expedite things. So having, our high school partners in other college, the CBOs help us kind of spread that message before the students on campus is so helpful for us. And also making sure that students have all their pre-arrival requirements. Soka, like many universities, sends out a packet to our students with all the things they have to do. So they've got to do surveys and questionnaires, sexual harassment trainings, alcohol trainings, health requirements. International students have additional health requirements. And Astrid can speak to kind of the visa process in terms of getting that right now. Do you want to go ahead, Astrid?
Yeah, so for some international students, they might already be an F1 student in your high schools or in your local community. These F1 students, in order for them to, it's just a requirement for them to be in our SEVA system. It's a part of the implementation that came about in higher education or in education for foreign students after 9/11. And so here we have a I-20. This I-20, in order for them not to go through the whole process and another fees of $300+, we just transfer the form to the college that they're going to be attending. So what you encourage them to know is just hey, do you have an I-20? If you do, make sure that your high school counselor or whoever is in charge in your international office of that high school transfers that I-20 to the school that you need to go to. We also have some requirements, different institutions for vaccines, right? Some of these vaccines are not available in their country if you're working with students abroad. So just know that some colleges do offer as well the health services on campus where those vaccines can then, or the requirements can be obtained here in the United States for them pre-arrival. And just speaking to the offices of international services, they'll be able to get an extension for that.
Thank you. So those are kind of some of the logistic things that we always would appreciate help, because it's so much easier for the students and families to do this before they're on campus, if we can support. And so we're all, as a college, we're always like, hey, that month of August, we'd be happy to, help out, or July, to give a webinar presentation about do this. Financial is another huge part that families have to do. We always talk about, applying for FAFSA, but then there's a lot of steps after that to make sure that the students persist through that, so that they actually are ready to get their financial aid disbursement once they do that. The other thing that we've spoken with our financial aid office, and they really reiterate, is that financial aid packages don't come into play for a lot of families until about 10 days after the official academic term has started. So even though the cost of attendance does include transportation budget estimate, that money is not going to be forthcoming until the student actually enrolls in classes. So a lot of students are kind of on their own to figure out how to get to the physical campus that first time, unless there are specialized programs or funding available for those students. Astra's going to talk to you all about deposit reductions.
Right. How many of y'all know about deposit reductions? Raise your hand. But yes, deposit reduction is actually a thing that I did not know when I was a first generation student applying for colleges. First, I think it's really important for parents to know in that process before, as the student is going through the application process, that there are deposits that the student needs to put in place in order to save their spot going to college. And that sometimes is very impacting to the family when they get the bill for $400 and they don't have that, right? Because perhaps that might be half of their rent. So I think getting into the preparation, of course, just for some families, that's not a reality, that there's no savings, but having, sorry, I see that some people are having connectivity. I hope you can hear me. But having that opportunity to have a conversation and say, at least these might be the deposit fees that will happen, gets them prepared so it's not all very instant or sudden to them as a surprise. Also, what that application process looks like, please become familiar that for your dreamers or undocumented or mixed status families, that application process is going to be terrifying. There's going to be families who maybe the student does apply, but the family doesn't want to give their information because they're undocumented. Being able to trust the institution that you're going to is a very important process. And I also, working now with students from those specific backgrounds where it's mixed status or sometimes undocumented as well, we have the conversations of, hey, we do not disclose anything to Homeland Security or ICE. At least, that's been the scenario in my institution. And so having that ability to tell the students, like, higher education people are there to help. They're going to help you navigate, have that clear communication. I think that's a really big relief, especially for their families. Some families are not going to want to know or not going to know how to navigate this because of the fear. And so, again, that's where all of our roles are so important, into just encouraging to have this communication of transparency with the financial aid office and with their admission officer as well.
Another factor that's coming into play right now, especially, is a lot of universities do have emergency fund programs, small loans that students can take out. Again, most of these are going to be for students who are enrolled or continuing on. but you should always ask, because very rarely are we going to advertise them on our websites. We're not going to post that. But if students do ask, there is money there to be found. Most of it's going to be in the form of a loan, but sometimes that's not always the case. And we want our students to succeed. But on that note, we also want to make sure that our students understand kind of the process of a payment plan, because that's a very confusing and nuanced situation. So some CBOs we've worked with before that's been really successful is they've brought in college speakers into their spaces and have us basically walk a student through a fake payment plan, so they understand, the penalties, because those little fees that about, $25 to return a check add up, and they matter to a lot of our families. And so if we can help the student just avoid that in the first place, or mitigate it, as much as possible, it's always our goal. But we don't want them, the first time they're hearing about this, to be when they're like, I missed a deadline, I've missed something. And some of those, again, are before the students on campus, that they're required to turn in these forms, sign their master promissory note, things like that. Another thing that's been really successful for us in helping our students and families become more comfortable is having the Office of Financial Aid present on the student loan process and the U.S. credit system, especially because the sad reality is some of our students who don't persist, they don't understand fully the repercussions of defaulting. And so our Office of Financial Aid's worked really hard to present specifically for first-generation students or for our international students who, might be first in their family to go to the U.S. system, about how to navigate that, the difference between private versus government subsidized loans, how to pay that back, repayment plans. And they're doing that from when the student starts college, not senior year, when they're already kind of checked out. We also really emphasize the importance of helping your students see getting a on-campus job is slightly different than it would be to get an off-campus job. And so making sure that they reach out and get connected to the right offices who can help, whether or not that's through student affairs, through their human resources, because that money, the way that federal work study is, or even other student employment programs, a lot of time it's first come and then the jobs fill up quickly. So it's important to kind of make sure that our first-gen students have that knowledge, so that they know to go get it as soon as it's possible up there. And the other thing is just the importance of personal finance. We love to have that conversation early on, because a lot of times the first time a student gets a reimbursement check,
Yes.
that might be the most money they've ever had, in their bank account, in their own name. And so helping them have a smart plan to navigate that money. I know I was super irresponsible my first semester, and I was like, oh, I could buy everything brand new. And that was not good. So I want to make sure no one else is in that situation moving forward.
Please let them know there's books, right? That they have to pay for. There's other costs in that.
Yes. And so Astrid's now going to talk about how to make sure that these supports are being used correctly.
Yes. So I know we're gonna run out of time, so I'm gonna try to speed right through this. Again, more helpful resources are there, but please know that on our end, we try to make sure that there's a lot of resources for first-generation students, as well as the rest of the student population. Some of the things that Soka offers here, we have our students that are going to be first year. They come in actually about a month earlier than the rest of the school, just to get acclimated with the campus, get to know the staff, get to know each other as well, their whole class. We have student leaders on campus too. They're called the SLLs. We also have different peer groups, different ambassadors, they're residential assistants. So we really rely on other students to just navigate them through that process, because they've experienced it as well. That includes international students. That includes, again, all of the students, even those who are not first generations, but are also open, to understanding different and empathizing with different communities. So we also have orientation programs. These are really vital please encourage your students to seek these programs. Usually they are a requirement, at least on our campus. So they will give you a timeline. They will give you information of when your orientations are going to happen. Sometimes these can be recorded and are virtual. Please follow those as well. We also look at what we do here at Soka is that we create a first generation gallery so that you are able to know your faculty and your staff so that there's representation on campus. Sometimes that includes students as well. But for me, I love that because coming to university, especially when it's a small private, that's really important to see people that look like you, people that you know you can go to when you're feeling homesick, when you're feeling confused about registration classes. But again, that's what your SOL, your student orientation leaders, are going to be for. We also look into the other institutions when we were doing our research. It's very cool. They have virtual campaigns or even just entrance ceremonies for first generation accomplishments. So if you're a first generation student, you have your entrance ceremony, and when you graduate, you're going to have your first generation graduation. And I think that's really beautiful. We also have, at least in the California state system, if you're familiar with that, we have the Office of EOP, which is a wonderful, wonderful resources for students usually that help high achieving, coming from low income backgrounds as well. First generation being that bridge. They offer academic counseling as well as resources. There's also workshops for financial aid, as we shared before, mental health resources, counseling. So these are very important things that are available to the students, but sometimes, because this is the first step going into these campuses, they wouldn't know, but being able to understand through you that these are resources that they can take advantage and they're free will definitely help, as well as the transition offices. What does that look like? Their writing centers. That is something that I did not know. Where is my writing centers to help me write the essays? I do not have to be perfect at everything. That's why I'm going to college to learn. Right. And so just going with that system, I feel also coming from different populations, especially for those students that are coming from immigrant populations, doesn't have to be undocumented, but these students are naturally navigators. They're naturally guides into their family, guiding them through a different culture, a new culture. So they're always going to be on survival mode. But if we can prepare them by taking care of them in that transition process of sharing, like, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be perfect. There's all these other transition offices and programs available to you. There's going to be speakers. There's going to be different things. So that's important when it comes to selecting the institution. Make sure those things check your box as a first generation. And my encouragement to all of you to encourage these first generation students is like, make mistakes. You're going to make these mistakes. Don't be afraid to make these mistakes in college, but seek out your network, right? So encouragement to just go is a lot stronger than what we said the college team will have so early on.
And this orientation obviously looks very different at some colleges. Some do it early summer before the students come. For us, we wait till they're on campus and they're taking one class in order to get familiar with the academics.
Right.
But it is, even if it's not during the time when the school year is going to start, that's a good way to practice what it's going to be like to be away from your family, to be navigating everything on your own. And so we always encourage families, like, sometimes it's an investment to send your student, right? You're doing that. But a lot of the colleges are willing to partner with families because we understand the importance of these orientation programs, that is what's going to help the student retain and get through everything that's coming in. And what we love about the student orientation leaders on our campus is that it's small, so the student feels seen. They have someone who they can go to at 10 o'clock at night when they're scared to ask a question, but they have that one person that can become their senpai, their guider through the process. That might be, for me, Astrid was my guide through the college process as my resident assistant. So
it was her RA, that's why.
Yeah, when we were students together. And so it's this full circle process. And then it's beautiful when that first generation student becomes the leader on campus as well. Yeah. So that's why we really, really emphasize the importance of these orientations.
So let's hit those last points really quickly, just absolutely. So that we time for questions. And
Yes.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And so another part that's really we want to talk to is that the students, when they're first adjusting to campus, there's this initial excitement. I have college, I have everything new, but then things start to come to light that we want always to just have some preparation, some awareness that these things might happen to you. And so they don't feel like you're doing something wrong or, everyone gets homesick. But as a first generation student, you might get particularly homesick because you don't have a sibling who can walk you through it. Your parent can't be like, this is what it was like for me the first time. Time management is hard. College is fundamentally different than high school, that not only do you not have someone looking over your shoulder, to make sure you're doing everything on time, but you have these huge gaps where you aren't doing something. And so it becomes way more important for you to have to manage yourself. And so that's one thing. The feelings of insecurity about your college choice, did I make the right choice? We always encourage people to look back on their list and why did you choose to apply here? To remind themselves why they chose this place. Particularly imposter syndrome is a huge component for us. And so on the college side, we're trying really hard to help students navigate that. But it's hard if the student doesn't even come to us. That's where we love when our high school, counselors and CBOs reach out and encourage their students like, hey, go talk to someone if you're feeling this way. Like, this is completely normal and they want to help you. And then Astrid is going to talk about going home.
Yeah. So adjusting back actually gets really challenging too, because you're going to college, you pick up a lot of new information. How many of you hung out with a friend before you start picking a little bit about their on their mannerisms, right? So that's going to happen to first generation students, and it's okay to let them know there's going to be code switching when you come back home. I remember that was the process for me with different of my friends that didn't end up going back to school. It's like, oh, you came back, you think you're better than everyone. And I was like, whoa, I got to check myself a little bit right there, right? But that wasn't the case. I was just learning. I was growing into new cultures. And in a way of seeing it as a downfall, I understood that this was a benefit to my community. This was a benefit to my family. My family had never eaten foods that were different for our culture, picking up pho, ramen, Thai food. My roommate was from Nepal in college. Another one was Puerto Rican. What did they eat? And I brought it to my family, and that was a different experience. Now my family is hooked on these different foods all over the world, which that doesn't really happen, at least for my culture background. It's just very limited, very close. And then it's not only pertaining to food, but just, education of being open and tolerant and being exposed to new communities. That is really a great benefit of coming back from college to your community. So again, just reassuring them that it's nothing bad. You're going to go through transitions, and that's okay. You're helping people on the way. And of course, please remind them to sleep. When we're first generation students, access to all that time, our sleep is important. So, but that's pretty much it for us today. Hopefully that was some helpful tips for you all.
Yes.
We're going to have links for you and have Britt help us out with keeping the conversation flowing. We're going to give you our information if you guys want to shoot us an email and have,
And we appreciate you so much for inviting us into this space. This is the first webinar I've ever done, so I'm very excited to be able to be here. Thank you.
And I think we can take this time for everyone to, if you have any questions for Chelsea and Astrid, let's use this time to ask them. You can enter your questions in the chat box, and you can also enter your questions using the Ask a Question resource tool. They're here to spend a little bit more time with us just to answer those questions that you all have. So we'll wait for those questions. In the meantime, I wanted to also let you all know that we will be following up with you with the webinar recording and the slides. There are a lot of useful tips and links. So we put together a resource kit, and I would love for you all to click on that link to kind of organize yourself with the many, many links that we provided. But thank you so much, Chelsea and Astrid. Let me make sure I show your faces as those questions are coming to us. All right. Okay.
I like to wave a lot, as you guys know. My hands and my...
All right. Keep those questions coming in, you all.
And then one thing, like, again, just lastly, just always communication. I think personally, maybe I'm projecting, but I just felt like I was always afraid of everyone. I couldn't go and tell them what was wrong if I was homesick, if I didn't understand the material. So communication, transparency, that's going to be the key to get you through your 4 years in college. Brittany, do you agree, Chelsea?
Yes, absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
have one question that came in. Can you please explain more about the request a deposit reduction process?
Definitely. I can start with this. So each college is different. I kind of looked up just the private schools, the public schools, different state systems. A lot of times it's, again, not going to be super outwardly advertised. You kind of have to dig deep into the websites if it's even on the college website, but there's usually some sort of process that the college has. For us, ours is tied to EFC. So we would expect our students to have applied for financial aid in order to ask for a deposit reduction. And then for us, they initiate it with the counselors. We pass it along to financial aid. Financial aid works on their side. And then we basically communicate back to the student, like, this has been your reduction based off of this, kind of with the discretion to the Office of Financial Aid can help that. So oftentimes if a family starts to explain like very personal information, about as an admission counselor, we might be like, you know what, pause, like we want to help you, but let me just transfer you to someone who has more familiarity with that. Other colleges have a form you can fill out. I know within like California, our CSU, our California State University system, they have a form that students fill out and submit that in order to petition for a reduction in deposit. It's going to be, each college is going to be different. Yeah. Astrid, do you have to add?
Nope.
No? Okay. Yeah.
I have one comment that we got from Anne. She mentioned that her team does very intentional transition to college programming with students and families in the spring. And she will be more than happy to share those resources in English and in Espanol.
Yes.
She's going to plan on uploading that to the college green light resource kit for our counselors. So go ahead. I will make sure that you all see that link there. But thank you so much, Anne. We have another question from Brittany. Brittany. Her question is, any good strategies or tips to help students physically get to their orientation and campuses? Many first-gen low-income students can afford or don't have the means to get to their campuses, but I'd like to know ways to help other students with this.
Yeah. For us, what we've been working on developing, especially for our international students, some universities now are working on creating shuttles and more giving out itineraries that are going to match other student arrivals as well. So in emergencies, I think there were some students in their Facebook groups too, of the incoming class who were like, hey, I'm coming from the Inland Empire. If anybody needs a ride, come with. So just encourage them to be part of that network of their incoming class. Usually, it is the expectation for some of the admission counselors to be able to connect that first class. So for us, at least at Soka, we have Facebook groups or Instagram groups that will have those conversations going. So if that's the last resort, then please have them post and say, hey, is anyone coming from Utah? Anybody coming here? And that. But also talk to your admission officer what that looks like. Again, the financial aid is there, but now the tables turn. You want them at first in the application process, then the institution is now going to want your student. So just know that, let your financial aid office know what that looks like in terms of helping you with travel costs.
Yeah, and sometimes, we can't always do everything. But we've also, out of the goodness of heart, not out of a policy or something, mobilized the alumni network as well for an institution. They might have someone who is willing to, give a ride, pick someone up from the train station. I'm a big advocate of using public transportation just because it can be an affordable option or affordable alternative to flying or driving in a car. And so same thing, working with the campus transportation to be like, hey, special case scenario, we have a student come across the country for Soka a couple of years ago from East Coast to West Coast using Greyhound. They had never, been to LA before, and they didn't quite understand how that, like, our campus is an hour south of that. And so the concept of getting that last little bit, we were able to then mobilize our resources to help pick that student up, because we're like, you're getting in at 11 o'clock at night. We don't want you just wandering around the train station in a totally unfamiliar city. But we wouldn't have proactively reached out to that student unless they wrote to us first and kind of expressed, just, is there anything you can do? That question can start that's the catalyst that can start it. But majority of the time, the colleges don't actually have an organized policy or process. It's going to kind of come down to each student, what we can do that year versus other years. Yeah. And to be totally honest, bright side of the COVID-19 crisis is that colleges are thinking about these things, right? Like, how do we get our students home? In the flip side, how do we get our students here? So I hope that the conversation continues around that specifically.
And we have another question. What advice do you have for students who may have to work while they're in school and balancing any financial obligations they may have at home?
Right. For me, I was very fortunate that I didn't have those financial obligations, but I did balance about 2 jobs while I was in school. It takes a lot of diligence, but honestly, no one taught me that. I just had to figure that out, right? And balancing that, academics is first, because the one thing that we didn't talk about is the impact. Retention is really important in being in that institution. So make sure that the school that you go to has a high retention rate, because the moment that your first generation student drops out, and if they took out loans, repayment plan goes into action within that 6-month grace period of them being out, right? So academics is first. You want to stay in school as much as possible. But with working, I always suggest, and we talked about this too, Chelsea, like, not to diminish the work of working at a coffee shop or working at the restaurant. But if that's not what you want to do after graduation, if you don't want to be in hospitality, please pick up a job that you cannot get back home. Try to do one that will give you those clerical skills, professional development, so that when you go home, be able to obtain a higher paying job, even for a summer internship. And same things that are going to build up your resume as you graduate from school. So for me, I'm a big advocate of students applying to student orientation leader jobs, because I know that it was very transformative in my career, even in obtaining this job as a first time recruiter, and then moving up into different fields of student affairs or higher education. And so if you can encourage students, to look for the development office, if they're already in ASB, like this is Associate Student Body members, or if they're part of clubs, organizations, their treasurer, secretary, that helps them apply for different jobs. So balancing that time and just, don't get burned out. That's a real thing. So having these critical conversations through that transition of senior year to college is really important. Just be open. And I'm sure some of you, have this experience. So being able to share that narrative, that your story, that's the best way to take on this.
And helping your families have that conversation too before they go about what would be financial expectation,
right.
And that it does have to fundamentally change when the student goes to college.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have an admissions question for you, Chelsea, related to the suspension and less likelihood of college admissions representatives visiting high schools and community-based organizations in the spring. What do you recommend counselors do to get colleges in front of students when in-person and physical events are not an option?
Yeah. To be totally transparent, I think we're all working on that. A lot of us are noticing that we're behind the curve in terms of digital presentations, but I know, for example, Soka, like our admission office, is working on setting up Zoom presentations, Zoom meetings with students, either one-on-one or with little cohorts together. And we would be happy to do that with students who are in a digital setting. So if you're a high school counselor and you're like, hey, I want to work with this college, I would just recommend at this point emailing the admission office and saying, can we set something up where you could do a guest presentation or something along those lines. And again, email is going to be super, super important because we're still all trying to figure out like how to forward phone lines and everything. We've done it, but that is kind of the quickest way. And I think that's also why it's going to be super important for those requests for information, the RFI, is that students who have shown an interest in our institutions, we're going to kind of be focusing on them a lot too, because we could tailor programming to them. We can advertise opportunities that we're going to have virtual events for those students. And, we always recommend we have within our database, we have a bunch of counselor names, of CBO names. And so we'll send them, same thing, mass email, be like, hey, we're going to be doing this webinar. We're going to be doing Instagram live presentation. And so if your campus is able to reconvene in person, great, we can do it all at once, or we're going to all just kind of figure out together how to do it in a digital setting. But I do think another thing is I would just, if you can, the rest of the month of March, most of us are focusing on the college side in terms of what do we do with our current students. Mm-hmm. And then kind of come April, I think that's when most of us will be like, okay, like we're really settling into this incoming class. How do we help them? But like, I know, for example, Astrid right now, she's, 40% of our students are trying to figure out where they should be, where it's best and safest for them to be. And so she's fielding those questions in addition to our incoming students. So a little patience, please.
Yes, please.
I will also add what I can only imagine. There are probably a lot of our counselor communities, whether it's high school or community-based organizations, that will be requesting Zoom events or online events. I would suggest, if you are a very small organization or small high school, take a look at your neighboring environment. Take a look at your schools, your different organizations, and see how you all can group these online events, right? Power in numbers, right? And truly being creative in terms of collectively. If you're sending, a college 5 individual requests, it's going to be a little bit overwhelming for them. So I would advise you all to, if you have your circle of advisor friends or schools in your area, see if you all can, identify one date that works best for you all in time, and send a joint request to a university, and kind of schedule out programming that way. So you're not exhausting the college admissions team, and then you can also really leverage your numbers as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, team. I think we are a little bit, we are definitely over.
Sorry. We talk a lot.
No, this is great. We are all family here. As we mentioned, it is a village. And so thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Astrid, so much for your time and your energy and your flexibility of putting together such a well-informed presentation, adjusting it according to, what's going on in coronavirus world. And for our counselors, thank you. We hope you all please take a look at those resources that we provided you. Please share this as many students and counselors as you can. There is power in knowledge. And in order to really help inform our community and make sure that we are providing the best opportunities for our students, is just sharing that knowledge and disseminating it to other warriors like yourself. As I mentioned, that PowerPoint presentation that Soka provided, go ahead, incorporate some of those slides into your conversations with your students who are transitioning in college, and make sure that they feel empowered navigating that. Any parting words, Chelsea, Astrid?
No, I'm just thankful for you, Brittany. Thank you for College Recruitment, and for everyone that took the time to be here. Please all to stay healthy, safe.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get through it.
Yeah.
We are. This world, it's topsy-turvy, but we're going to get through it. And I love our community.
Yeah.
I do. And so thank you all so much.
All right, team. Well, we're going to be signing off. College Green Light out, and may the force be with you.
Yes.
All right. Take care.
Bye.